Are you a project manager who's just been given a new project and you've been given a scheduling tool and you just don't know where to start with it? Well, these tips, I'm hoping, will at least clarify some points to get you started. Hi, my name is Leslie Greening, and I want to talk to you about 5 important points to address when first setting up a project in your chosen scheduling tool. Of course, there are other considerations, but these I find are fundamental in the managing of your project plan. I'm going to give you the 5 tips, which are structure, settings, calendar, logic, which is also known as dependencies, and resources. So number 1, structure. Now don't go straight into your project schedule and list down loads of tasks because you're just going to come into difficulty. What you need to do is to think of a structure. You're delivering something. What are you delivering? Whatever it is, that is your main product. Underneath that, what's your next item? You have a sub-product. Within that, you have a sub-product. Sub-product. They all break down to certain levels until you get to a point where you have to start setting up your work. What work is required to get that low-level product. So you need to think and design your project first before you even think of your activities. Because otherwise you start listing down your activities, you try to link things for your dependencies, and things just don't make sense. It can come to a point where you've listed down a load of activities and then you need to report on your project and you can't because the design's not right. So there's various things you need to think of, how you're going to deliver the project as to how you want to design the structure. Some people don't want the product breakdown structure. Some people like a work breakdown structure where it's like software engineering, hardware engineering. It makes it easier for them to deliver the project. So these are just things that you need to think of before you get started. So then we've got number 2, the settings. Now, once again, most people use a project planning tool or project scheduling tool. A lot of people, it's Microsoft Project because that is reasonably priced and it's fairly easy to use, but sometimes it can be sort of easy to use that people think that they know exactly how to use it and they don't. There's things you need to think of first, like once again, you don't just go straight into listing down your activities. You go into the options and you look at your settings and do you want it auto-scheduled? Do you want it manual scheduled? Task types? Do you want it fixed duration? Fixed units? Fixed work? I prefer fixed duration because most of the projects I've worked on, it's an end point with an end date and you've got a constrained project finish date. So you have more control over the dates there. I have discussed this more in my video for quick tips on Microsoft Project Setup. So these are the settings. So once again, it depends how you want it set up. But what I'm saying is you must think about that before going straight in to organising your project. The next thing is calendar. Now, once again, this is like part of settings, but it is a fundamental part that you must put in at the beginning because when you think that project will finish, it might not finish because you haven't included holidays, there's shutdowns. So this is another thing that should be set up front. Some people, what they'll do, if a task finishes over Christmas, they know that people have got, say, 3 days off. So a 5-day task, they will put as 8 days. But this is not a good way of doing it. It obscures information. It's hard to control, especially if you do it on lots of different activities, because it's not just Christmas. It could be an August shutdown. It can be Easter. So it's hard to control when you do it like that. And also, as your plan matures, that 5-day activity that went over Christmas might be pushed out to January, February. So then it's not an 8-day activity anymore, it's back to the 5-day activity. So it's not good habit to put holiday time, extended duration, to include that. So that is my third tip. The fourth tip is the logic. Now, logic, dependencies, links. This is where you link one activity to another depending on whether there's a constraint on it, a dependency on it. You'll have one task that has to finish before another one starts, and that one has to finish before the next one, and so on. There are variations where you can do overlaps and that, but for simplicity of explanation, all I say is that you should always have links on your tasks, predecessors and successors, in order to get your best critical path, which will show you if there's changes in the project, anything that is on the critical path, that if that gets pushed out, you know it's going to impact your project, the whole project end date. So you really need to have all the links in there in order to have the confidence that your critical path is correct. For the project start or whatever kicks off your project won't have a predecessor. The handover, project handover or product handover, whatever is at the end of your project, won't have a successor, but everything else really should have a successor and a predecessor. And I always say that they should definitely have successors, because if they don't lead into anything within your project, then why are you doing it? So just try and ensure that everything is all linked. And also, it's not good practice to put links on summary tasks. You can cause circular references or conflicts in the scheduling, conflicts in the logic. So it's best not to do that. If there's a clump of activities which sits under a particular summary that you know all of them linked to another activity, which would be its successor, then just do a milestone to say all these activities complete, and then link that into the successor activity. This brings us on to tip 5, resources. Now, what you've got to think about with resources is that there's normally in software packages, there's resource sheets or resource dictionaries. Now, this is the good way to enter your resources into a plan. Microsoft Project and probably other tools like that, you can actually enter the resources straight onto the task, but it's not good practice. If you think of a name like John Clark, John could be spelt with an H in it or without. Clark could have an E on the end, might not. John could be short for Jonathan. Jonathan could have an H or not. So there's all these different ways. I think there could end up being about 9 different ways that this same resource could be in your plan if you put it straight on the task. So you're best off setting all your resources up in your project sheet or in your dictionary, whatever they call it, and then you get into your activity or task and you select the name from the resource sheet. Another thing that is not good practice is entering resources onto the summary. Enter them onto the activity. It's far easier to control the plan when you've got your resources on the activity that they're actually working on. Well, I think that's about all for today. And I hope that it has helped to clarify some points. So until the next time, thank you.